morning, everyone. Welcome to the Writer's Mind. I'm your host, C.P. Balos. And today, we would talk a little bit about character development, and specifically, do we rely on organic character growth or do we force character growth? What I mean by that is, do we let the characters tell the story or do we change them to fit the story? The best way to see that is visual entertainment. We see it in soap operas, TV shows, whatever we have. Especially like soap operas. They have a cool character, they have a character a certain way, and as the story progresses, they need them to be something else, so they tweak their history. It's easy. You got shows that are around for like 30 plus years. You got these characters around for a long time, so they tweak a little bit to make them fit. Sitcoms to that, but sitcoms continuity-wise, where they didn't know there's going to be, streaming later on, syndication, so they had kind of an excuse, but it's something that we see a lot of visual media where they change the past or change a character to fit the story. So, and the thing with that is, for me anyway, is it's not organic growth. If you tell the story, you have your characters. For me as a pantser, like I said, I know how it's going to begin, the climax, and the ending. So for me, everything in between is the character's journey. The characters kind of tell me what it's going to be. So I let them tell their story. Sometimes they throw me curveballs and have their own free will or whatever you call it. They'll throw me curveballs. Now they'll do something I don't expect, and I'll be like, okay, this kind of, but it's like, I basically kind of trusted them, so to speak. Let them tell their story, see what they're going on. And I like to tell people, my muse is smarter than me, and my muse makes me look very smart sometimes. Like these great ideas or whatever. And a lot of times it's just the characters just kind of wander off by themselves. They figure out what they want to do. I try to keep them in line, but they tell their story. Changing the characters, again, it's not so much like a plotting device, I don't think, because people, they plot, they design their characters to fit, they design their stories to fit, they decide to go a certain way. But a lot of times it's also like I think more of a Pantsers thing, where we're telling the story, we want to tell a certain story. We want to tell it a certain way. Excuse me. We know what we want to do, how we want to do it, and to get there. So a lot of times, and when the character starts doing something that's not helping the story, we may not want to go after that, because we want to tell this. We want to write, a romantic comedy. We want to write a mystery. We want to write a horror story. And if it starts going into another genre and kind of taking away from that, it's natural. We want to try to hem them in, like, come on over here, straighten the line. And if they don't want to cooperate, then it's easier just to change character. And then we can go back and tweak what was earlier. That's why here editing fixes things. So it's our own personal, beliefs. Because a lot of times, I've changed some characters where they just wasn't working. I just could not get them to work. They just weren't fitting right. They just weren't growing bonds, speaking of the other characters. It just didn't feel right. So like, okay, maybe if I just did a slight tweak and it worked. So we all done it. It's just, which one do we prefer more of? Do we prefer to let the characters tell their story, or do we prefer to tell the character story? And make them fit. And it's kind of it's a fun little balancing act, because you don't really. It's not like I know myself. I don't really think about that often when I'm doing it. I just kind of do it, and then I hear people. They'll say, "Oh, I can't believe the character did this," or they'll argue the characters. I do that. It's like I've cussed mine out a few times. They've made some weird changes. It's like in choices, like, what's wrong with you? You're supposed to be smarter, whatever. But it's a fun little concept to play around with. Do we want to change our characters or do we trust them? Let me know what you prefer in the comments below. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.